Hey, what on earth is happening with hip-hop at the moment? This is more than simply a rap feud. This is more than a courtroom drama. This is insane on a whole other level. Oh, news broke. You're not prepared for this one, I assure you. The FBI captured Lil Durk on a wiretap, according to shocking new revelations that are upending the King Von murder case as a whole. This could be the most significant development in the history of hip-hop law since OG Knight and that white Bronco. Get this now. In public court, confidential audio that was purportedly taped months ago was played. The gasps in that courtroom, y'all, were deafening. The judge had to literally halt the proceedings, according to insiders, since the room turned into a frenzy. People are whispering and crying. Durk's legal team appears to have encountered a ghost. Here's the worst part. On that wire, what did Durk say? Vaughn wasn't the only issue. Fans might not have anticipated who it implicated. A name was mentioned that has the blogs ablaze and the streets talking. We faced treachery, hidden truths, and a potential cover-up that might destroy everything we had built. Stay put. This is a crazy story. It all began like any other Chicago Tuesday morning. The sun was peeking through the blinds, traffic was humming, and the internet was operating normally. However, at 9:37 a.m., the streets froze as phones began to explode with a single line. The audio from Lil Durk's wiretap was just aired in court. People don't trust it at first. They initially believed it to be clickbait. Then suddenly it seemed credible. Media outlets began to cover it. It was confirmed by court insiders. Federal monitoring was not only recording Lil Durk, but even his closest followers were alarmed by what he purportedly said on the tape. All of this was related to the continuing investigation into King Von's purported involvement in FBG Duck's 2020 murder. The case had been revived by the feds with fresh evidence, new witnesses, and what appeared to be secret audio that no one had anticipated. The instant the prosecution remarked, "Your Honor, we have recently obtained audio material that is crucial to this case," Durk's entire demeanor changed. He had no idea what was about to happen to him when he entered the courthouse in a gray-fitted suit. His eyes narrowed as he leaned forward. You could feel the stress rising as his attorney muttered something in his ear. The bomb dropped when the court permitted the tape to be played. On the tape, the voice sounded crystal clear, voice calm and deliberate, but saying something that made the whole courtroom gasp. "I told Van to chill, but he wasn't trying to hear it," the voice stated, according to witnesses. "That situation with Duck, it was already in motion before I even touched down. He was on demon time, despite my attempts to slow it down." It seemed as though a ghost had entered the voting room. In the gallery, many covered their mouths. Seated in the second row, Van's mother broke down in tears. She wasn't by herself. Many of the people who were close to Durk and Vaughn were clearly shaken. The most bizarre aspect is that Durk never denied being on the recording. The judge ordered a break right away. The prosecution already had the metadata, timestamps, and occasion pings, all of which matched, but Durk's attorneys requested more time to verify the audio. Chaos broke out outside the courtroom. Supporters assembled. Reporters rushed. Social media took off. Within an hour, the hashtags #FreeVon and #DurkWiretap were popular. The atmosphere within the court building was intolerable as many asked, what did Durk mean by already in motion? Was he saying Van acted alone? Is he trying to distance himself? Or was he confessing that he knew the move was about to happen? Stone-faced, Durk sat with his legal team, but his fingers were twitching. Lil Mister, his cousin, also arrived late. "This isn't looking good," court said to a local source. However, that wasn't even the most startling aspect. The prosecution revealed yet another secret after the break. They disclosed that Durk had been secretly monitored for more than 9 months. Additionally, the FBI allegedly recorded other conversations at that period in which Durk talked about tying up loose ends and safeguarding the circle. Within minutes, one line slipped from the court transcripts, which were not made public. "We all fall if he folds." Do you understand what that means? Fans began guessing right away. Who was he? Did Durk refer to a co-defendant? Or perhaps a member of the inner circle who was becoming unsteady? Has social media become an investigative tool? In an attempt to connect Durk's remarks with historical occurrences, Fans brought up old Instagram lives, YouTube videos, and even interviews. People began to piece things together. Perhaps Vaughn and Duck weren't the only subjects of this wiretap. This might have been larger. Perhaps the federal government had been waiting to link Durk to an entire network. Back in the courtroom, Durk's crew went into full damage management mode. According to his attorney, Dake was speaking theoretically rather than confessing, and the recording was taken out of context. They claimed the wiretap was unlawful and filed a motion to suppress the material. However, the judge would not have it. He decided that the audio was admissible and scheduled a time for the jurors to listen to the entire recording. Things really started to spiral out of control at that point. Following the hearing, Kayla B., King Vaughn's sister, dropped a bomb on Twitter. "Nah, so you knew all along and let him crash out. Say less," she tweeted, igniting a full-fledged online battle between Vaughn supporters and fans. The tweet was later removed by Kayla, but not before it was screenshot and widely circulated. The family was split apart. "We always had love for Dek. Always. But if what we heard today is real, then he got an answer for that. You don't sit on knowledge like that and say nothing," Van's uncle stated on a local podcast. Tensions began to escalate once more in Chicago. People who used to ride began sending mysterious messages. According to insiders, there was a distinct energy within the F camp, as if they were unsure of whom to believe. You could feel it in the air. Everyone was moving cautiously, one source stated. This is where the twist became even more complicated, though. A fresh witness emerged, someone no one anticipated, reportedly a former F affiliate, someone who had been absent for many years. Court insiders referred to him as the Ghost, but his name has not yet been made public. People practically rose up in disbelief as the feds brought him into the courtroom. In addition to being aware of the hit on Duck, this ghost figure was supposed to testify that Dake attempted to clean up the aftermath by pushing people to keep quiet. And you know what? The ghost said he also had recordings. Thus, in addition to Dake being struck by the first wiretap, a second wave of possible audio is due to emerge at this period. It's not simply Durk's voice. We're going to reveal names. Fans never anticipated names. Dake also glanced directly at the prosecution table, the judge, and the audience just before the court adjourned for the day. "I tried to protect everybody, but you all don't see the whole picture," he muttered in a voice almost audible above a whisper. His attorney drew him back and advised him to keep quiet, but the damage had already been done. People were outside speculating wildly after hearing that one sentence. Did Durk accept responsibility for Vaughn's actions? Did he attempt to halt the hit after learning about it? Or is this all a part of a larger scheme? Someone attempting to undermine him from within? In any case, this was only the first day of the consequences from the wiretap, and things were going to get out of hand with more audio, more witnesses, and a potential betrayal from within the F camp. The excitement continued outside the courthouse steps as the court adjourned that day. Blogs took off. The streets of Chicago were inundated with hypotheses as YouTubers turned on their cameras. Durk was the true victim, according to some. Some believe he had just committed the greatest betrayal in hip-hop since the East Coast or West Coast era. However, Durk wasn't even the most important question. It has to do with the ghost. Who was he? Who was he? For what duration had he been observing from the darkness? More significantly, why right now? The court was jam-packed the following morning. Since 5 in the morning, people have been waiting in a queue outside. They desire to see this ghost in person. However, he had a black hoodie pulled down over his face when he entered, escorted by Iran and U.S. Marshals. People's mouths fell. Some were able to identify him right away. Montana, a former affiliate who disappeared in 2021 following rumors of snitching, was the ghost. People believe he had fled to Atlanta. Some claimed he relocated to Vegas. However, it seemed that he had flipped. Not only had he flipped, but he had been collaborating with the federal government the entire time. The room fell hushed as Ree took the stand. Durk didn't even blink. Despite being calm, Reese's voice was as sharp as a knife. He started, "I wasn't going to say nothing. However, I couldn't ignore the claim that Vaughn was operating alone. Not when I'm aware of the reality." He informed the court that tense meetings were already taking place in late 2019, long before Duck was killed. He said that Durk, Vaughn, and a few other unidentified odd members were discussing competing operations tactics, especially in the vicinity of 63rd. Ree said, "I was in the room with maps, screenshots, and social media data like it was a war table." Van didn't move without permission, according to Ree. He was crazy. Yes, but he held Durk in high regard. Van would relax if Durk told him to, unless someone told him otherwise in private. That statement was like a grenade to the courtroom. Van's family sat motionless, trying not to cry. Despite Durk's attorney's objection that the testimony was hearsay, the judge let Ree proceed under the special witness protection provision. Ree revealed considerably more information. He claimed that Durk called one of his security chiefs the day after Duck was killed and said, "We clean, or we get leaks." Durk said, "Handle it quietly," when he was told, "One dude is shaky." Ree just replied, "Yes," when asked if he had recordings of that exchange. The courtroom erupted once more. Whispers, gasps, and even a few people in the rear were hauled out for yelling. Durk sat there without looking at anyone. His jaw twitched, but his face was expressionless. Early on, Kayla B. exited the courtroom. She was clearly upset and declined to respond to media inquiries. Everybody got a role to play. Some played dirty, she wrote in a now-deleted Instagram story later that night. The internet took that and ran with it. However, no one noticed coming in this subsequent turn of events. A significant Chicago blog received a leaked mystery direct message the same evening. Prior to Duck's passing, it was purportedly between Durk and Von Monks in it. Van tells Durk that if I get locked up, this will fall on you. Durk will react, "Just make sure you move smart, because they'll think you pulled the strings." Fans were divided, but I'll take care of the rest. Some claimed it was fraudulent. Others noted that the tone and lingo perfectly suited their familiar text style. Suddenly, a whole different theory surfaced. What if Durk ended up placing more responsibility than he deserved while genuinely attempting to protect Vaughn? However, not everyone had such belief. The prosecution made an unexpected motion on the third day of the trial. They had gained access to Durk's 2020 encrypted group chat, which contained several messages discussing timelines, routes, and confirmations. "We aren't pulling triggers. We just pull in chess moves. Let the pawns play," was one purportedly Durk post that drove followers into a frenzy. Blogs went crazy attempting to figure out what chess moves actually meant. Rapper Durk's attorney remarked, "You can't criminalize metaphor," asserting that it was lyrics. Not only that, but halfway through the hearing, a member of Van's inner circle, someone the public hadn't heard from before Von passed, entered the courtroom, supporting the prosecution's claim that Durk utilized music to cover up actual plotting. People went numb when they saw Asian Doll. Although she wasn't on the AC witness sheet, her appearance alone sent shockwaves through the trial. When she entered, Durk looked up and appeared anxious for the first time. Asian sat behind Van's family, folding her arms and staring at Durk. Later that day, she tweeted just once, "I said, this isn't what it looked like." The fans went crazy, with some claiming Asian had hidden information and others believing she was merely there to offer support. However, behind the scenes, court officials disclosed that she was supposed to give an off-the-record statement to the prosecution. Then, there was another bomb. The court ended immediately after Ree, who was still on the stand, said there was one more tape, but it wasn't from him. "The tape that matters most, it isn't mine. It's hers," he said, pointing to Asian Doll. However, word quickly spread. Did Asian Doll have a recording that could prove Durk gave the order, or was she sitting on something to clear his name? In any case, she became the new focus of attention. Track, Van's cousin, made a statement outside the courthouse, saying, "Look, we all want justice. But if people start flipping the script now after years of silence, then whose side were they ever really on?" Back at the hotel, Durk's team scrambled. According to insiders, Durk, his lawyer, and two anonymous industry executives met behind closed doors that evening to discuss whether or not to accept a deal. How much would he have to give up if that were the case? However, Durk wasn't giving up just yet. According to reports, his final comments before the meeting concluded were, "I'm not going down for this. Being the scapegoat is not what I signed up for." Chicago felt different the following morning. It was gloomy and anxious, as if the city itself knew something significant was going to happen. There were bloggers, fans, and even local artists crammed into the benches of that federal courtroom, and everyone's eyes were fixed on one Asian doll. She entered wearing all-black glasses, but you could feel the weight of her presence, and Durk didn't look at her. His team were flipping through folders and whispering, but he sat motionless. When the court resumed, the judge addressed the elephant in the room by confirming that Asian doll had turned in private communication records, which included an audio file, a number of messages purportedly sent between her and King Vaughn, and a voice note from an unidentified third party who was close to the inner circle. When asked why she had withheld the information for so long, Asian simply replied, "I was scared, and I was loyal." However, she now asserted, too many lies have been told. As the prosecution aired a brief clip, the courtroom leaned in. "Keep it off socials," Durk remarked in a hushed but distinct masculine voice. If it came back to haunt him, he knew it would look horrible. "Don't tag me," I told Vaughn. "Don't bring me up. Keep quiet about it." It wasn't Van's voice. It was BOKA 600. Not DURK. A pin drop may have been heard. Bois had spent years writing for Durk. His voice was being heard in court, but he never left his side. Before the duck problem had materialized, Van received direct directives from Lincoln Durk. Durk briefly closed his eyes. It was only a fleeting glimpse, but it was the first sign of emotion since Rhee's testimony. Within an hour, Bois' team issued a statement disputing the tape's authenticity and claiming it was altered, spliced, and taken out of context. The prosecution didn't believe their assertion that Bois was discussing street commerce for music promotion. 2 days prior to Duck's shooting, they claimed to have timestamps and metadata that linked the communication to a known meeting between Vaughn Durk and 2 other affiliates. The bloggers went berserk outside the court. Hashbook at Ape and Durk revealed began to gain popularity. All day long, fans quarreled. Bois was allegedly setting Durk up. Others thought he was unaware that he was being filmed. A few even claimed Asian had been sitting on this clip like a trump card, waiting for the right moment to play it. At that point, another turn of events occurred. The Asian doll never expressed it verbally. However, something significant was discovered in court documents that were disclosed that same day. Voice notes, text messages, old snap messages, and even private recordings of fights she had with Vaughn during their most stressful months were all part of the cloud archive she had turned over to the feds. And in it, one conversation stuck out. Van allegedly said to Asian, "I'm not going to lie. Durk warned me to back off," although he was aware of the time. He was aware of how this would proceed. "They'll leave if I don't move. First, move on to me. I'm simply outperforming them." People were spinning just from one quote. Was Durk attempting to defuse the situation, or was he allowing Van to complete the necessary tasks? Behind the scenes, Durk's staff was working feverishly. According to court insiders, a settlement was being considered in private. A possible cooperation agreement that may lower Durk's sentence if he provides information on higher-level operations, but not yet a plea. Durk, however, wasn't going that way. Not yet, anyhow. In fact, Durk spoke out about his close friend's story that same evening. Durk shared a brief video of a black screen with only a voice. Fans knew what that meant. He was talking about more than the case. He was talking about Bois in relation to Rhee, possibly even with regard to Asians. But while everyone was focused on Durk, the feds had another trick planned. They dropped a subpoena out of the blue. For Memo 600, the stand was called. 4 at times. The memo had been eluding FF months earlier. His disagreement with Durk had been widely reported on Twitter using subliminal sent. A full-fledged diss tune that was never released with dubious live remarks. As a result, when he went to court, many thought he was going to ruin everything. But the memo stunned everyone. "I'm not here to snitch," he said. The document said that Durk was a puppet master who never pulled triggers or talked directly, saying, "I'm here to get my name cleared." Rather, making sure that the grunt work was done by others. He asserted that the layers, which included rappers, shooters, cleanup crews, and fall workers, were part of a system that gave Durk insulation. Then he continued, "The most shocking statement of the day is that there is another tape. It wasn't made by me or Rhee. But it came from a girl Durk used to tease, and it shows that he knew about Durk before it happened. The prosecution didn't deny it. They confirmed it. Durk allegedly said, "It's already in motion. If it occurs, it does. We will continue to ride it out as usual," during a private discussion with a female associate over a burner phone. Fans immediately started guessing. Who was the girl? In any event, the existence of this call and the fact that it was now being authenticated indicated that things were quickly spiraling out of hand. Van's mother posted on Facebook, saying, "Live that evening." Some suggested that it was a lesser-known ex who hadn't spoken since 2021. "The truth was all I ever wanted," she continued, crying. "They said it was street crap when I witnessed my baby's death. I was unaware that all of this was happening. If you knew what was about to happen, why didn't you stop it? Why didn't you alert him?" Rap was no longer the only topic of conversation when her live stream went viral. And for the first time, fans were just angry and weren't picking sides based on allegiance or music. Von and Duck were no longer the only subjects of conversation. This was turning into a full-fledged Rico and Durk, with the storm centered around him. This dealt with actual lives, actual losses, and actual repercussions. And when it seemed like things couldn't get much worse, another name was revealed in court filings. An unidentified Atlanta producer who was also on the Fed's watch list for allegedly engaging in money laundering related to F operations. As the sun rose over downtown Chicago, rumors began to circulate that someone from inside had flipped overnight. Insiders in the courtroom were buzzing, and it was reported that someone who had known Durk since the beginning of Mixtape and was a member of his close circle had agreed to testify. The gallery was packed when the court opened, security was doubled, and all phones were confiscated. When the name THF Zoo was disclosed, people were shocked. Oh, the zoo had served next to Durk in the trenches, always in the background of people's lives and in the front row during performances. "We thought this was blood, not just an acquaintance. Press is not allowed." When Durk finally answered, he came in with his head down and his chains off. His expression fell, and he shook his head slowly as he turned to face his lawyer. He seemed to be in pain, and you could tell that sometimes the people you share bread with can betray you just as much as your enemies. "I'm not here to lie. I'm not here to be mean to anyone, but I will not accept responsibility for things that I did not touch," Sue said, sitting on the stand with his eyes forward and his voice quiet. He never once looked at Durk. "We all knew what was coming, which left everyone speechless," he continued. "The streets have been scorching for everyone. Ben did make his own decisions, yes, but the green light and the energy came from above, and everyone knew who it was." The courtroom fell silent in shock. The prosecution leaned in. "Who exactly are you referring to when you say the top?" the lawyer asked. Sue didn't hesitate. Durk lets out audible ones. To restore order, several even yelled no from the back. The zoo wasn't done, so the court had to continually strike the gavel. He claimed to have been present at 3 or more sessions where the subject of retaliation strategies was discussed. He asserted that the message was obvious even though Durk always used coded language and kept his hands clean. One comment that caught my eye was, "Nobody is safe who tries to play boss from the other side." Days before Duck was killed, we showed them how real bosses act. That was Durk, according to the zoo. But then the zoo revealed the most startling information. Durk was not only aware, he claimed that when it was hauled down, he pushed us to modify it after giving his consent. Phones dim the lights and briefly disappear. Durk's lawyer immediately objected, saying it was all hearsay and retaliation. But the damage was already done. The courtroom was filled with weeping. Von's sister reportedly departed. Fans were going crazy outside the zoo, and Durk's cousin had to be restrained from shouting. Heartbreak, anger, and miscommunication were commonplace in online comments. There were still many who thought Durk was being set up. Others finally accepted what they had been terrified of for years, that the contented rapper with the hits had a far worse past than he ever disclosed. But Durk had said nothing in spite of all. Not once so far. In order to give their client the opportunity to address the court directly, Durk's legal team requested a special motion. Despite being unusual, the session was adjourned by the judge. Everything appeared to stop abruptly. Durk stood up, turned to face the courtroom, and moved to the center. He looked about, first at Van's mother, then at the zoo, then at the judge, and finally he spoke. My brother passed away. King Von was more than just a rapper, he told me. He belonged to my family. We both began with nothing. We didn't grow up with guidance. Retaliation was part of our upbringing. He paused. I advised him to relax, advised him to slow down. But when did the streets get involved? It was too late. I still haven't pulled the trigger, but I'm also not stopping anything. I'll carry it because it's mine. People couldn't believe it. He was not confessing anything, but he was also admitting his part in the culture that produced all of this. I tried to change the cycle, created companies and jobs, and pulled people from the neighborhood, Durk continued. But in reality, I waited too long. If I go down, I just pray it isn't for nothing, which rocked the gathering. He finished before returning to his chair. Van's mom was seen crying. Zhu was staring at the floor. The prosecution appears surprised as well. The judge postponed the case for the day, but she promised to make a ruling within a week. And that evening, when it seemed that this was the final twist, another leak surfaced on the blogs via an email or scanned document. In addition to Durk, 6 other identities from the industry, 2 producers, a business manager, and an unexpected individual from Atlanta were sealed in a federal indictment. Even though the identities were temporarily hidden, fans started forming relationships. They were talking about more than just Vaughn and Durk. Rico's long-running lawsuit was only now beginning to make sense. And maybe Durk was only Chicago's first domino. There were no posts, no statements, and only silence. The only narrative that the AF Instagram published was a black screen. 3 phrases. Never put your confidence in anyone. Here we are, everyone. After days of trial chaos, wiretaps that were released, surprise witnesses, and devastating revelations, the King Von case has officially taken a turn that no one could have predicted. Lil Durk, who was once considered the voice of the streets, is now involved in a legal dispute that could potentially affect the entire contemporary rap scene. This is no longer merely a case. From flipping Asian dolls to Reese Montana, revealing hidden receipts to the zoo, and leaving behind a sister he once thought of as family. Hey, legacy is at risk. Careers, freedom, and reputations are all at stake. The fact that we don't know how it will end is the worst part. Will a request be granted by Durk? Will more names be made public? Will this be the beginning of a far more extensive takedown? Or is there an impending event that could alter the plot? Once more, the federal government is undoubtedly paying attention. The internet are searching for any clue they can find, and the streets are keeping a watch on things. But we want to speak with you now. Do you think Durk was trying to shield Vaughn? Or was he pulling strings from the shadows? Was Zhu lying? Or had he changed his mind to defend himself? And if Durk falls, who will fall next?